the best way to shut up an unhappy woman is just to fuck her. That's the man's responsibility. If she's unhappy, it's more than likely the man's fault in that case for that third option. You gotta fuck her properly. You gotta strip her away from the internet and her friends. So you gotta fuck her, let her talk, fuck her, and then call it a day. It's actually not that hard to deal with an unhappy woman. You just unfortunately have to deal with it and understand that women are essentially children. They're emotional creatures. They hate your guts, and if they had power, Nick Fuentes and Tucker would not be doing this. I probably wouldn't have a YouTube channel, though Twitter would not be the way it is, even with Elon at the helm. Like, it's insane how crazy they actually wield their power, but they wield it effectively. If you're not the one using it, your enemy is, and they will beat you down until you're a pulp. We need to do the same thing.
If I were Trump, I would say screw 200 National Guard, like arrest the mayor of Chicago, like arrest the governor, shut it down, like make it clear, like Washington, bring in the troops and say the federal government is supreme. The immigration law is the law of the land. If you're not on board with that, you're going to jail. Anything less than that, you might as well just not even bark up that tree at all.
Yeah, 100% absolutely crush them. There's no way around it. You have to absolutely crush them because that's what the left will do to you. Anyway, we should probably get into the Tucker Carlson thing and Fuentes. I called it spicy earlier because not really because the content in itself is spicy. Like I said, I did watch this or listen to this earlier, but more about Fuentes himself because he is a, how do I phrase this exactly without pissing people on both sides off? A touchy subject, you could say. And so if I paint him in a good light, that pisses people off. If I paint him in a bad light, that pisses his fans off. So it's actually kind of hard to and if I remain neutral, that pisses both sides off. So there's really no winning when it comes to him, thanks to how people act with him. And so generally, I just kind of ignore him because that's basically the safest method. Other than the Sam Hyde one, that was pretty funny. And I never really got into his stuff because he just kind of, I don't know, existed. I was in my own little bubble. It is what it is. But I was listening to this, and I was like, holy fuck. I'm him, for real, for real. Like, am I the Graper VTuber? Now, he might be painting himself in a better light because he's with Tucker Carlson. I know he's been exploding recently, especially after the Charlie Kirk assassination. And he's doing really well. He is ascending, and you're a fool to think that he's not. But I listened to this, and it is extremely interesting. I basically agree with him on pretty much almost all the issues that he brought up during this. So let's get into this. Let's actually get into this.
When I was in high school, I was very political. I was reading a lot of the libertarian stuff, Austrian school, Chicago school, economic type literature, because that's what was popular at the time. If you went online in the early 2010s, that's all the conservative content there really was. That was the most extremely online type
Libertarian
stuff.
economics.
Well, yeah, basically kind of the remnant of the Ron Paul revolution.
Yes.
The Young Americans for Liberty, PragerU, which kind of skews a little more, I guess, conservative, but very basic small government, individualism, libertarian type stuff.
So you watch PragerU videos?
Oh yeah, I was in the Prager Force.
What's that?
It's a Facebook group for college kids, and they promote the PragerU videos
Wow.
to the college students and high
So
school
you really were a
students.
product of the moment.
Absolutely.
And how'd you feel about Trump?
That's so funny because I remember PragerU being a thing and early Trump's term, trying to be like this conservative organization to push for more people to join and band together to help organize against the lefts. And everything about it just felt so fake and artificial that I strongly disliked it. And so I just kind of ignored it, frankly. It's unfortunate that, well, I say unfortunate. That's not exactly the right word here. I did basically stay in my own bubble when it came to this thing. But Nick Fuentes is a few years older than I am. And I do find it interesting throughout this whole entire interview that I was listening to that Fuentes and I are basically at the same point with our and I don't want to say ideology, but our same point in our ideas, our solutions, and where we really kind of want for America. And our origins are completely different, but at the same time, but same. Because like I said, I'm a few years younger than he is. But I told the story many times before, but I was a Tumblr girl. I got into politics when I was 12 by seeing a gay rights infographic, and I was already falling out of my faith because I was disenfranchised with the Catholic faith, frankly, and bored of it and tired of it being shoved down my throat. And seeing the gays be oppressed by the Catholics in particular made me mad because I didn't see why the gays would be treated like that. They just seemed like normal people to me. I didn't even know what a gay was until I saw that infographic, for fuck's sakes. And that just kind of led me down a spiral of, well, atheism as well as social justice warrior nonsense, SJW, for a couple years until the left became even more radical and more violent, and with especially up in the rhetoric about killing all men, all cops are bastards. They weren't really focusing too much on the blacks. Trannies were still a very small subsection. Most of that SJW nonsense was about women, specifically feminism with Anita Sarkeesian, feminist frequency, Lacey Green, and gays essentially, and gay rights, which then Obama did help sign in the 2015 for gay marriage, um, for it, and that was rough. That was basically all around that same time period. But when they started talking about killing all men, and that all men are evil, I was like, you know what? I like my dad. My dad's great. He's fantastic. I fucking hate my mother. I hope she would die. I don't really want all men to be killed. You know, there's the patriarchy is real, the glass ceiling, the pink tax. You know, wage gap, blah 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 blah. But I'm not a fan for killing all men. And I was hearing rumors about Sargon of Akkad and how evil of sexist he was. He also has some associations with Armor Skeptic from my atheist time. And so I was like, you know what? There's two sides to every story. I want to see what's going on with this Sargon of Akkad guy. And then I just kind of fell down that rabbit hole. Sargon of Akkad really is that alt-right pipeline after all. I guess the leftists are really correct. But then again, when they keep on forcing it down your throat 24/7 that you're evil, fascist, Nazi, racist, sexist, homophobic piece of shit, well, congratulations, you created the monster that you so desperately hated, because I was nowhere near as radical back then. Which, funny enough, Tucker does bring up in this interview about how he feels like when the left keeps on pushing for this stuff, they're trying to actually make into that monster to justify themselves. Which is actually kind of a fair point, and I would be for that point. However, I've learned through my years that yeah, white people are superior. Brown whites can go back to their own fucking country. America should be a white ethno state, and women have no place in the workforce with politics. That makes me a Nazi. Well, I don't consider myself a socialist, but oh well then. They're gonna call me that anyways.
Well, initially, I didn't like Trump. When the primary started in 2015, I considered him to be a statist.
Yeah.
Which sounds so ridiculous now.
No, a lot of people thought that.
Yeah. And I was a libertarian, so I saw him as a big government, 1990s liberal. When he was asked about healthcare, he said, well, we'll take care of everybody. And I said, I'm a Rand Paul guy, Ted Cruz guy. Those were kind of my people back in 2015.
You like Ted Cruz?
I was a cruise missile.
Does Cruz know that?
I don't think so, no. I was actually on his campaign.
You were on the Ted Cruz campaign?
I don't know if I was on the campaign, but I door knocked in a little village in Chicago, in McKinley Park, for Ted Cruz.
No way.
In the Illinois primary.
Did he write you a thank you note?
No, I didn't get a thank you. He lost, so I guess.
Yeah, he did. He did in a very humiliating way. Wow, that's amazing. So what happened?
So,
Yeah, because Fuentes, like I said, I'm younger than him by a few years, and you know, Tumblr girl, still in middle school, high school, that kind of deal. So I didn't exactly have this stuff, but he was obviously way more active in politics than I was. Way more well-read than I was for a lot of these things. But one thing we had in common, though, was actually not being a fan of Trump initially. I went from when Trump started his presidency run, not liking him. I didn't like Hillary either, but I really didn't like Trump, and I was more anti-Trump than I was anti-Hillary because, you know, my girl boss feminism. By the time that the actual election was happening, I still didn't like Trump. I still thought he was the lesser of two evils, but I did like him more than Hillary, and if I was old enough to vote, I would have voted for him. And I remember actually watching the 2016 debate and liking Ron Paul a lot. He definitely appealed to me and what I wanted a lot better. And he still kind of does to this day. I still have some libertarian flirtings here and there because I don't like the government. I prefer small government. So, even though Fuentes and I have the age gap as well as different origins with this stuff, and I know he's not technically a Zoomer, he's still technically supposed to be a younger millennial with his age. It's interesting to see basically where the younger generation is in general, because his face is full of young guys. If you look at Gen Z and men in general, they are extremely right wing versus Gen Z women are extremely left wing, which he does bring up in this interview as well. There's like a 45-point difference with them. And I guess in a way, I guess that makes me a man after all. But I do find it interesting how similar we are, even with the differences, And I do think a lot of it is just because we are young, because we are younger, and being influenced by how bad society is crumbling around us. And as growing up in this age, as because I was part of Gamergate with Sargon of Akkad, because I was still, I was around that time watching, just wanting to play. I just want to play my video games as the sexy woman turned into fat black woman instead, and censorship across the board and attacking male gamers to, now immigration and Black Lives Matter and now white ethno states. It's been definitely a timeline, a pipeline, like they were saying back in the day. Well, too bad now. Each has their pros and cons, unfortunately. Uh I'm almost one of the bros. Unironically, yes. I was thinking about it more with the whole tomboy discourse and everything like that. Like obviously I still got a lot of womanly interests and a lot of womanly things about, but there is I think it's a byproduct. To do some armchair psychology on myself, I really think it's a byproduct of being raised essentially by a single dad. I'm also a man spreading beer drinking, loudly burping tomboy. No! I don't drink beer, it's gross, and I try not to burp. Uh,
Like everybody else in 2016, went through this ideological awakening. And first, I shifted to Trump. And the first realization that I had is it started in 2016, actually, because the primaries, started in 15, around April or May, I think was the first announcements. And I had very negative feelings about Trump. And like I said, pro Rand Paul, pro Cruz. But when the actual Iowa caucus happened and the primaries began, I saw that Trump was dominating. And every night in the Super Tuesday, when they had all the big contests, one after the other, I remember the media was furious that he was winning one after the other. And I remember thinking to myself, like, structurally, if I'm a libertarian or a conservative and we want to change the country, we have to win elections. If you want to win elections, you have to bypass the media. I sort of had this realization that the media was really standing in the way. They were the problem. And I had this realization that all the conservatives and Republicans up to that point were afraid to take on the media. They, like Mitt Romney, would cower before them and were so apologetic and so weak. And so initially I said, I actually don't ideologically agree with Trump at all, but he will destroy the liberal media, or at least their monopoly on thought and opinion.
Yes.
And then a breakthrough can occur. So that was kind of the first hump. And I said, I could get behind Trump because he's a winner. He'll win for our side. And that was kind of the first big thing. And then as I listened to him more and more, his speeches and his rhetoric, I started to think about immigration.
Which you hadn't really considered before?
Never. And the reason why is because I was from a 95% white suburb. So the diversity had not really reached my corner of Chicago yet. Me and my family, not so much my family, they grew up in the city, but
I mean, this is where Fuentes are similar and different at the same time again. I'm sorry, Fuentes is a really bad pause face that you have there. My apologies. But this is where we're similar and different. I mean, I definitely was a supporter of building the wall because that was a huge thing about Trump's first presidency. I was completely for it because once again, illegal immigration's bad. It's you have to be completely retarded or just brain dead to think that illegal immigration is actually good. It's a basic bitch argument to be against it there. But like it's where the differs is working at the gas station. Roughly around the same time, that's when I was starting to get into that and just starting to focus more on those issues just in general. Especially as Black Lives Matter was rising. They existed in 2012. Every election cycle to come out of the woodwork, so I'm sure they'll come back for 2028. Well, then again, maybe they'll be so destroyed by then it won't be an issue, but we'll see then. They started out in 2012, and they came back in 2016, and obviously 2020 was their peak. They still existed in 2024. So that was a rising issue with those riots, because there was a Ferguson. Or was that 2012 that happened with Ferguson? Because that was slightly before I was really getting into politics, / I was still quite ignorant on a lot of things. Granted, I'm still ignorant on a lot of things, but the point remains, okay? So, it just similar but different once again.
growing up in the suburbs, I was insulated from that. So it was just not even, it's actually, you're going to love this. I don't know if I've ever even said this on an interview before. I was listening to Mark Levin's show. This goes to show how normie I was.
Actually?
I listen to him every day.
You listen to Mark Levin every day?
In high school, yes.
Wow.
I was a fan. I loved his show, and I actually liked how he was kind of obnoxious and mean to his callers.
Yeah.
Vicious, and I liked that. I thought that was funny. But I'll never forget one show. He goes live, and he says, America's becoming a majority non-white country. Does anybody think that's a good idea? And I was thinking to myself, yeah, that actually doesn't sound so good. I didn't really even think that America's becoming majority-minority like that.
Wait, so you were radicalized on race by Mark Levin?
Yes.
Are you making that up?
That's a real story.
Amazing.
He planted the seed at least. And then I saw a graphic on 4chan or Twitter, and I'm sure you've seen something similar. It said, this is what the map looks like, the electoral map, if only men vote, if only women vote, if only whites vote, if only non-whites vote. And it became very obvious what the electoral problem is. It's demographics. These immigrants are coming here. They're going to turn Texas blue like they turned California blue.
Yeah, I saw it happen.
Yeah, and you look at even the opinion polls. These people don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in the Constitution, the Second Amendment. As a libertarian, the things that are, and as American, things that are important to you, they don't understand these things. And so I said, that's another political obstacle. You've got the media, you've got immigration. So I'm thinking like, well, we're going to vote for Ted Cruz. He's going to be the constitutionalist. We'll vote for Rand Paul. He'll be the libertarian. But what stands in the way of political power for us? It's the media and it's immigration. So I said, well, we got to get Trump to beat the media, build the wall, deport the illegals. And once we set the country straight, then we can actually have our constitutional republic back. That was kind of the idea. And that's the mindset that I had going into college.
Amazing. So then what happened?
And it makes logical sense. I mean, it still makes logical sense to this day. It's still the same issues. Media has mostly been defeated. Most people don't trust mainstream media anymore. I would say, as a general rule of thumb, they've been proven time and time again with liars when it came to Trump and how badly they were attacking him his entire first term, and hell, even afterwards too. But then COVID and the big lie that the government did there, and the media just constantly backing it up as the government flopped on, Trump's evil vaccine. Oh, now it's Biden's amazing vaccine. Oh, masks are bad. No, masks are good. No, masks are bad. 6 feet apart, because you're not gay. Then the Black Lives Matter, everything, the fiery but mostly peaceful protests going on with the massive building on fire in the background. The different things like that. So I think the media has mostly been destroyed. Lots of articles have basically been thrown to the side and burnt to the ground. But the one thing that's actually gotten significantly worse is immigration. And nobody really wants to fully address it like it should be done, with Trump being the closest one. And he's still not as far as he should. But in 2016, his first term, he was only mostly focused on building the wall to stop them coming in. I know deporting would have also been a big deal too, because that makes the most common sense. But I don't really remember him talking about that actually that much. As a big thing was just building the wall. Not really deporting those that are already in here, but just building the wall to stop even more to come in.
So I go to college, and I'm just, at that point, a huge Trump supporter. And you got to understand, for me, for my generation, so I was 18. I turned 18 in August 2016. And to us,
That's
Trump...
amazing.
Yeah, well, because we're like the first generation that was influenced by Trump coming of age in that moment.
No, it's amazing because when you're living in something, you don't appreciate its full significance. But to be 18 in August of 2016, so this really is, as you're forming your views and really yourself.
Yes.
In the middle of this.
We'll admit that we are not the most disciplined snackers. When the pantry calls, we answer. It can be cruel. But what if there was a way to snack like you want to snack and not deal with the consequences? Heaviness, bloating. Well, there may actually be an answer to that. It's called Vandy Crisps, brought to you by the same people.
So I know he's got a lot of ads in this thing. Well, honestly, his ads do sound kind of interesting for myself and what I like. But he does have the Black Rifle coffee, though, which I'm not too happy about. But still, skip. I kind of feel bad, though, because I technically am using their content. That commenter actually had a good point about it. Ads! Eat the crisps of all. They do sound good, but I still need to eat dinner, so I'm kind of hungry. I kind of hungry at this moment.
If you don't feel like ordering online, stop at your local Sprouts supermarket and pick up a bag. They're good.
It's transformative. And, so for us, he was like the savior of Western civilization. We looked at him as like, and by we, I mean me and all the online kids, teenagers that supported him, we really believed the hype. Like Teflon Don, like he could go into any scenario and win. Like he was unstoppable, unflappable.
Yeah, the joke at the time was that we memed Trump into the presidency. I mean, there was a whole free Kekistan, Chatelet, Pepe becoming a hate symbol because of the whole ordeal. Like, there was all these hilarious memes. Alex Jones turned the freaking frogs gay. Like, there was this whole cultural zeitgeist online back when the internet was still actually pretty free. Before things started really shutting down after Trump won, and then PewDiePie did the whole Nazi joke, and then the adpocalypse happened on YouTube, and everything all the other social media started locked in place to help shut things down, and all those wonderful things. Patreon, yeah. Before all that happened, though, as Trump was ascending his presidency, in a way, we quite literally memed him into the presidency. He he barely won. I should say barely won. It wasn't like a landslide like 2024, and it wasn't as obvious as fraud as 2020. But he managed to scrape by. I remember the Democrats claiming it was Russia helping cheat the elections and Russiagate and the whole piss dossier and everything. But he made it. He made it. Chatelet brothers. We must free Kyrgyzstan once again.
Nobody could score points on him. He just seemed like, they said you can't stump the Trump. Like he could not be stumped. And so he just had this aura of inevitability, invincibility, and I love that. And so I went to Boston University. I got on campus in September, and I was wearing my MAGA hat everywhere, in the dining hall, walking down the street, and it's a city campus. So you're walking down Commonwealth Avenue, and you're in the city of Boston, which is super liberal. And at that time, it's different than it was now. People were getting fired for wearing MAGA hats. People were getting punched in the face. It was like being a Trump supporter was out there actually back then. It was controversial. It was controversial everywhere, not even, just in liberal Boston. But so I was wearing my hat everywhere, and I was just getting accosted constantly. In the dining hall, people would come up and yell in my face. Some black girl in a hijab ran up to me and said, "You know what you're supporting? You're racist." And I'm trying to get my pizza. I'm trying to get my oatmeal or whatever at the dining hall. This was happening constantly. And so I was going then on Twitter, and I had a small Twitter account with my real name and face, and I had, maybe 200 followers. And I'm posting about my experiences. And I caught the attention of a lot of people on campus for wearing the hat, for posting on Twitter, and they found my Twitter.
You've only been there like a month?
Last weeks, maybe 3 weeks. This is starting to kick up. And I catch the attention of my peers, and they start going at me on Twitter and giving me death threats. "We're going to kill you. How dare you? If I see you, I'm going to beat your ass," that kind of thing. And this was my first experience with this. Now we're all kind of desensitized to it, but that was my first run-in with this intensity from the left. So I file a police report. I get real nervous. And, when you're a student, you can't really avoid other people. You're in a dorm room. Exactly. You're in so you're vulnerable. And anyway, long story short, so one of these guys from the campus libertarian group, Young Americans for Liberty, he reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I'm not going to say his name, but he goes, I go to a school in Boston. I'm from YAL." He said, "And I'd like to set up a debate with you and one of these people that's been giving you a hard time on campus," because they were doing a lot of events. He said, "Is that something you're interested in?" I said, "Absolutely." And so he goes around and he asks some of the bigger people that are antagonizing me on Twitter, and everybody says no. And he goes, "Yeah, no one's going for it." I said, "Well, can you try again? Can you?" And so he finds one guy, and it turns out to be the student body president of the whole university.
It'll be you.
Yeah, the senior, this liberal douchebag progressive, and he's the student body president of the student government there. And so we set up the debate. It was about a week before the actual election. So I think it was end of October, beginning of November. And they hold it in this auditorium in the center of the campus, and like 300 people show up. So it turns into like this huge, and they're all liberal. They all hate my guts. They're heckling me the whole time. They're yelling at me. We do this debate about Trump versus Hillary. And so I'm there, and I'm pro-Trump, and I say, I think Trump's going to win. And I'm straight up like ripping the Ben Shapiro talking points. I'm saying, it's got everything to do with culture and nothing to do with race, and diversity's a problem and all this. And I decisively win the debate. It's like not even close.
Man, nothing about race. Jesus fucking Christ, it really was 10 years ago. Fuck, even the Ben Shapiro mention. Ben Shapiro used to be like the conservative, right talking head that like everyone respected. I personally didn't care for him myself. I didn't really, honestly, I didn't like how he spoke. He just spoke way too fucking fast, and he was way too condescending for my liking personally. Although I did see clips from there and there, and here and there, and I agree with him from time to time, but I still didn't really like him on more general level. And so I just didn't really watch his stuff. I subscribed to him, and then I just kind of read based off the titles, and I went from there. And I just didn't like Ben Shapiro. It's so interesting actually seeing how he's actually fallen off, because the internet dominance, the cultural dominance, the right has shifted, well, more right over these past 10 years, that the basic bitch stuff that Ben Shapiro would say and not questioning Israel this whole entire time has just become more common knowledge that even normies are actually against. And now Israel and the questioning that is his biggest deal, and well, everybody is well aware where Ben Shapiro lies. Nobody actually really trusts him for now obvious reasons, because he's a Jew and he's loyal to Israel. Israel first. He doesn't give a shit about America as long as Israel gets its all his donations and money and federal shit. Like, he'll just keep on promoting that. So nobody actually trusts Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. In fact, I see constant jokes about, because Matt Walsh is starting to question Israel and its influence. He's been doing that for at this point a while, and everybody keeps on joking of how long Matt Walsh is going to last. He's doing phenomenal on Twitter right now, and just in general. So I think Ben Shapiro is well aware that if they get rid of Matt Walsh, they're gonna oust themselves a little bit more than they normally do, just a little bit, and so they have no choice but to keep him, or else they're gonna they basically have nothing else left. They got rid of Brett Cooper. I never watched her stuff, but I've heard good things about her, and yeah, they're not doing too hot. But 10 years ago, Ben Shapiro was all the rage. Dave Rubin, which Fuentes does bring up. Let's see who else was also big at that time period and more corporatized. I mean, he already brought up PragerU, but I felt like that was a little bit more. I don't feel like there was a huge support for PragerU. I could probably go find my alt account and all the ones that subscribe. Tim Pool. How could I forget Tim Pool? Oh yes, the Beanie Man. He was massive then. I mean, he's still all of them still have a following. And I think Tim Pool's the only one that's really survived from that time period still relatively unscathed. But he hasn't he shifted a little bit more right with the times too, but he is not catching up with the trends. He's still stuck, as the old jokes would say, with a fence stuck up his ass because he was a painful centrist back then. He's still a painful centrist right now. So he's just sticking with his normie audience. The internet discourse is now being controlled by the posters instead, and not these big figurehead conservative folks. Brett was cool. She's literally just Gender Bent Shapiro, though. She straight up looks like Gender Bent Shapiro, though. She's pretty, but like she literally just looks like Ben Shapiro, but woman here.
Debate wraps up, and this girl, who I think I talked to her on Twitter once or twice, comes running up to the stage after the debate, and it's Cassie Dillon. And at this time, she's a fellow at Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's company. And like I said, I barely knew her. And she comes running up and she says, "Oh my gosh, I live streamed this debate on Periscope on Twitter." She said, "and 30,000 people watched it, and you have like 5 job offers. You did incredible." I said, "Wow, I don't know what to say. That's great." She goes,
You're 18 years old.
Yes. So it's like happening very quickly for me, you know? And she goes, "Do you want to do a post-game interview after the debate?" I said, "Sure." And so she asked me about how I thought the debate went and what my views are and things like that. And, very normal stuff. And then at the end, she says, "I just got back from doing study abroad in Israel." She goes, "And it was amazing. Would you ever take a trip to Israel?" And I said, "No, I think I got everything I need right here in America." She goes, "Oh, okay." And she wraps up the interview. And that was a little bit of foreshadowing. And this begins a relationship, not a romantic relationship, but we become friends and we start talking. And she's plugged in, like I said, at Daily Wire. She's talking to people at Right Side Broadcasting Network, the college Republicans. I start to develop this friendship with her. And over time, she lands me this show on Right Side Broadcasting Network. And in this time, I'm really starting to lean into America first. I'm becoming more pro-Trump as time goes on. And what really stood out to me was Trump's inaugural address in January 17th. So this was just a couple months later. And in Trump's inaugural, he says famously, "A new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first, America first." And I said, that's me. Like, that's what I believe. Yeah. I'm an American nationalist.
Me too.
Fully at this point. Not even a conservative. And there was one thing that happened just before that that really struck me as strange. And I've told this story before. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but suffice to say, Barack Obama, in the lame duck period, so the Democrats lost the election, he's on his way out. There's a resolution of the Security Council condemning the settlements in the West Bank and Israel. And typically, the U.S. delegation will veto those resolutions condemning Israel. Well, Obama's on his way out. He's got nothing to lose. So the U.S. delegation abstains from the resolution, and it passes. And Fox News and all the pro-Israel conservatives are calling him an anti-Semite. They're saying he hates Jews, he's an anti-Semite, he hates Israel. And I saw that and it struck me as strange because it seemed hypocritical. It seemed like how when conservatives would critique anything about race, we got called racist, or anything about feminism, we got called sexist. All Obama did was uphold U.S. policy on the West Bank that we've had since '67, which is we don't support the settlements. I said, how is it anti-Semitic to just be consistent on our U.S. foreign policy? But like I said, which is a Republican-Democrat consensus. And I got attacked for this. I wrote a big article about this. I tweeted about it. I tweeted to Ben Shapiro. I said, I've never seen anything on the Daily Wire that's actually critical of Israel. And he quote tweets me. And at this time, I have 1,000 followers on Twitter.
How old are you?
I'm 18. I'm
You're still a freshman in college, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is even before I started my show. And I don't know, I probably got 100 likes on this tweet. It wasn't a viral tweet. He quote tweets me and says, "To accuse a Jew of dual loyalty is the surest sign of anti-Semitism." And like, this is how it sort of begins. And I see this tweet. And by the way, that was on Christmas Eve in 2016.
He immediately called you an anti-Semite.
Mm-hmm.
That's just fucking insane, man. Like in 2016, 2017, the Jew question really wasn't on my mind. I did really think it was like a conspiracy theory. But I didn't really care about conspiracy theories either. Because, well, it wasn't as bad as like it got with 2020. And wow, they labeled everything as conspiracy theory. Because the media was so frenzied over Trump and making the most insane bullshit and calling everything conspiracy theory, I didn't really care about it because it was hard to tell what was real and what wasn't, thanks to the fact that everything was labeled a conspiracy theory. at that time period. And so I thought it was a bit ridiculous to think that all the Jews control the world. Like there's no way all the Jews control the world. Blah 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 blah. But for Ben Shapiro to target his tiny ass account during the time period and say to accuse a Jew of dual loyalty is anti-Semitic. That doesn't even make logical sense. Like that literally doesn't make logical sense. It's dual loyalty because you have dual citizenship. Of course, you're gonna, like, by default of having dual citizenship, you have dual loyalty because you're a citizen of both countries. So if they were conflicted with each other, which one are you gonna actually choose? And my spidey sense is telling me that a Jew is gonna side with Israel because they're Jew. This is kind of how those things work after all. And Nick was just asking like a basic bitch question there. Like honestly, I kind of feel bad in a way. I mean, like I said before, he's a few years older than me. His origins are similar but different. You know, blah 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 blah. But he's been way ahead about this stuff much longer than most people have. I know there's some of you that like I see you. I've been on their ass since they got caught dancing. Different things like that. I know some of you have been aware and noticing for even longer than Fuentes has, and I'm technically relatively new to the scene for it myself. And I kind of actually feel bad because one, I feel like I've been a fool and not realizing this sooner. And two, I feel bad for Fuentes because he has been a canary in the coal mine for a long time and has been completely disregarded and ignored and called crazy and a whole bunch of other names and different things like that when he's just been correct on a lot of things. And honestly, Tucker does get into him here for this. We're gonna skip basically the Daily Wire's effort to destroy Fuentes because, like I said, we don't have time to watch this entire thing. So we'll just skip basically long story short, sorry Fuentes. Please actually watch this interview. Even if you dislike Fuentes or Tucker, I'll put the link in, well, Discord / chat if the chat works, because I saw it was working and now it's not working again as per usual. Please watch for a little bit, like comment for the algorithm. I know it's Tucker and he's a million times bigger than I am, but this is actually a really interesting interview overall, and that's why I do want to talk about it. Long story short, Ben Shapiro was trying to groove Fuentes, and that didn't work out too well. So it starts a little bit before the identity politics, but Tucker does get into Fuentes about that stuff. If it loads. Right now, we just got flush your screen right now. The big thing about Fuentes is how much he talked about it before it became mainstream, and he had a big enough audience for the Jews to go after them. Yeah, but he was doing pretty well for just himself. It's kind of crazy how successful he was at essentially such a young age. Like, he struck gold through hardship, and all of a sudden, randomly on his plate. Really lucky and really unfortunate at the same time.
A true, not just principle, but like spiritual reality that we have to defend, which is God created every person as an individual, not as a group. No woman gave birth to a community. Like, we hate that kind of thinking, right? Collectivist thinking like that. That's identity politics. That's what Dave Rubin engages in. That's why Dave is like just a child. Like, you don't pay any attention to Dave because he's like shallow. But we're not going to be that, right? Or no?
No, I completely agree with you. And, you know, like, and not to be that guy and say that thing, but like, my best friend is a Jewish person. You know, but here's my substantive disagreement, because as a Catholic, I could not agree more with you.
Yes.
In what you're.
So this is where I actually kind of got surprised. Like I said, I always kind of ignored Fuentes just because of all the stuff that was all kind of around him. And I just never really took the time to really dig into it because I was content in my own little bubble. So Tucker coming out and saying, oh, he's a Christian, he doesn't want to hate people, identity politics is bad. It's really unfortunate because identity politics is everything. It is everything, even we don't want to make it or not. And so then Fuentes says, yes, I agree with you. Kind of threw me for a loop because I never took Fuentes as somebody who would say, yes, identity politics is bad. But then he says the opposite. So I don't know if he was just trying to be cordial and nice to Tucker and agree to then, like, get his point across. Because one thing I did like about this interview is the fact that they're both very respectful for each other. And even when Tucker was starting to ask more pointed questions, and Nick was actually more on the defensive side of things, they were still actually having a good conversation with each other. It wasn't really a debate. This is a labeled interview after all. So maybe that was a tactic. Maybe it was a flip-flop. I hope it's not a flip-flop because that's a little bit upsetting. But it was surprising hearing him say this, but then he basically retracts it like 5 minutes later.
You're saying, I love all people, even the ones that don't like us. We have to love them all, and we have to recognize that
we're required to.
Yes, and especially Aquinas says the Jews are a witness people, and so they actually have special protections under the law, according to Catholic philosophy. But I guess my substantive disagreement, which I've said on the show also, is the idea that neoconservatism and Israel has nothing to do with Jewishness, Jewish identity, the Jewish religion, because clearly the state of Israel and the neocons are deeply motivated by that ethnic identity, and their allegiance to Israel proceeds from that. You know, the plan of greater Israel, the blood and soil nationalism of Israel, it stems from this ethno-religion, which is Judaism.
Well, this is, just BLM, the new version. This is identity politics. They're engaging in identity politics. I mean, that's just so obvious to me. But the problem in your response, I get what you're saying, but the problem in your response is it does not apply to every individual.
No, and I would never say that.
Okay. Well, I just think it's important to say that, not to kind of like dodge the accusations against you. My best friends are Jewish. Like, okay, I agree. Embarrassing, even though it's probably true, and it's true in my case, actually. But whatever. But because just that principle that we're all judged as individuals by what we do, that our faith, the decisions that we make, the way we live our lives, and God will judge every one of us in that way, and that's how we're supposed to judge. Like, I think that's true.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But I guess the disagreement is, you say identity politics like it's a bad thing. I think identity is reality.
So this is where I said, where I find it weird that he agreed, but then 2 minutes later, he disagrees with it. And so because of how quickly and smoothly it is, I don't want to accuse him of flip-flopping, because it's not like it happened like a half an hour later as the topic changed or something like that, and he just kind of forgot his point. It kind of seemed like he was being like cordial and generous to kind of like, okay, we're on the same page, but type of deal. Maybe I'm being too generous to him about this stuff, because I have heard he does flip-flop on a lot of issues. But it's just like, so identity politics is bad. I agree with you. Christian values, we shouldn't hate each other. Not all individuals are like that. I agree. But identity is everything. Like, those two things don't go together, actually. Like, Tucker Carlson, for the fact, I think Tucker Carlson here is wrong, by the way. I think identity is everything, like Fuentes was singing. Trying to pretend that, Israel's new Black Lives Matter, but essentially for the right, or whatever the case is retarded. Every single group of people with an ethno-nationalist for their own, except for white people, except for white Christians. You see this every single day, all the time, on the internet in real life. Blacks are completely tribalistic for other blacks. Indians are ridiculously tribalistic for other Indians. Until they know each other's castes, and it's a slightly different story. Same with the Chinese, same with the Japs. Everybody's an ethno-nationalist for their actual own people, and obviously in this case for the Jews. Identity means everything. Identity, your genetics determine your, are a large part of determining your IQ. Your genetics determine a good chunk. Nurture does affect a lot more, but nurture does affect a lot too. But your nature is like at least 50% of it. At least 50% of it. And where you're born and what ethnicity you are born as basically just determines your future for it. And so if you're lucky to be born white in America, then that's going to have a massive influence on who you are than if you're Indian born in India for it. Identity matters. Identity is everything. Would it be nice for us to all hold hands and kumbaya and get along and, work as a functioning society regardless if you're white or black or Jewish? That would be great, but the fact of the matter is that's not how it works. That's not how reality works. Just because you're a Christian, and granted, I'm an atheist, I'll be fully honest here, so the Christian argument doesn't work on me personally, but I don't care about this neutered, passive Christianity arguments. Older Christianity was much more aggressive, and now we have this more modernized soft ones, and all it's doing is just indirectly, and sometimes directly, because a lot of Catholic groups do commit charity to help with refugees and importing all the Africans into America, unfortunately. You see it a lot in the red states, and fun fact, is just help with the Great Replacement, whether it be directly, like I said, or indirectly. And in this case, with Tucker not admitting that identity is a big deal, is he's basically indirectly supporting it, even if he doesn't actually realize it. So
identity is reality. Absolutely. You just can't have a country of 350 million this diverse where it's just like warring ethnicities, because then it's Rwanda soon. And
I forgot he made this point, but he would be, sorry Fuentes for the bad pause screen again, but he is technically correct, which is why you just deport all of the foreigners. America is a white ethnos is supposed to be a white ethnos. It's supposed to be a white majority nation with only the little bit left over from the black slaves, which is a whole different issue, but it's always been causing problems since they basically came into America all those hundreds of years ago at this point. Well, but even like I said before, even for the civil rights happened in the 60s, the percentage of 12 to 53% was 12% of the population was doing about 50% of the crime based off the old statistics. It's basically the same as it is today, except the population's even bigger, unfortunately, with it. And they're still always been causing problems. You can't have a global people. You have to have a homogeneous society for it to survive, and even 12% was 12% too many. They still had problems in America back in the day, but it was only in small pockets. Now you have all the problems we have today. Now we're 55% white, and everything's the shit. So yes, the biggest we can't have all these foreigners at each other's teeth and faces and trying to kill each other, but they're going to do that naturally because everybody's tribal naturally. So the solution is you deport them. It ain't that hard, Tucker.
You know, the people with the most force just kill the others. So like, you can't have that here. Right?
Yeah, but I would say specifically as it pertains to, you, I think, have said it's the neocons, and I think that neoconservatism, where does it arise from? It arises from Jewish leftists who were mugged by reality when they saw the surprise attack in the Yom Kippur War.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of it for sure. But then, like, how do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I could just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody, because like, what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian. That's why. So I don't, like, why not? Like, I'm pissed at the neocons, very pissed. I've said that a million times. I've been mad since December of 2003 when I went to Iraq. And so, like, I went and asked straightforward questions to Ted Cruz, because that seemed like he was a sitting senator who's like serving for Israel by his own description. He seemed like a worthy target. I'm not going after MTG. Who's like the most sincere like, why not go after Ted Cruz? I don't understand.
Well, again, with Marjorie, I was a friend of hers, and she spoke at my conference, and
I do feel bad for him once again, because as he's telling his story, it seems like he's been backstabbed by every single person. Once again, I highly recommend checking this out, because it's a fascinating interview. But I know he's got a lot of problems, and, flip-flop Fuentes and other accusations and different things. But I don't consider 18 a kid. The one thing I do criticize both of them for is why Tucker says this kind of makes sense, because he is so much older than Fuentes, but Fuentes leans into it and accepts it, is calling him a kid when he was 18. I fucking hate the infantilization of people. 18 means you're an adult. Yeah, it might be a day difference between when you're 17 or 18, but you're an adult now. You are going through life, and go back only like 100 years ago or a little bit more, and 16-year-olds still were getting jobs. 16-year-olds were having kids. Like, 16-year-olds were functioning members of society, especially when they were women, because they got sold off. I wish we would bring that back. I'm not saying reduce age of consent or anything like that, but there is still this infantilization of people. They're like, oh, 18-year-old, you're just a baby. 19-year-old, you're just a baby. 20-year-old, you're just a baby. Blah, 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 blah. When are they going to be adults then? Was it fair for Fuentes to be dogpiled so much and when he was 18? No. Anybody who would go through such rapid ascension like he was doing from a nobody in Boston University to having his own show in less than a year, okay, that's pretty crazy, regardless of the cases, but obviously he showed he's competent and was able to handle it like you were supposed to be able to do 100 years ago. Tangent aside there, he's been backstabbed left and right by, like, everybody for the past few years. Granted, he's the one telling the story. There's two sides to every story. Maybe he's not the victim he portrays himself to be, though. Calling him a victim does feel a little bit strong, but remember, chat, when everybody has explains a situation of themselves, there's two sides to every story, and usually nobody's 100% a victim. But I still feel bad for him because he was just thrown around left and right by people who he thought he trusted. So, yeah, now we're in the year of our Lord 2025, 10 years later. I don't blame him for being so jaded. I don't blame him for being an asshole about different things. Like, he's been through a lot. Been watching the financial audit guides and saying how many people in their 20s are infantilized. COVID kids are fucked. Yeah, there was the one about those illegals I wanted to react to. I do want to react to some of his content eventually. I've been definitely leaning into more of the React content a bit more than normal. And so I do kind of, I don't know, I want to do that earlier, but I also need to throw some articles and other random stuff in because I don't want to become a React Andy. It's just there's been a lot of stuff worth reacting to, in my opinion, for different things. We'll see, but maybe if another good one pops up, I'll do it. But those illegals looked insane. Oh god, I honestly still want to react to it because here's the assassination attempt. That's a pretty wild story too. Okay, there we go. We're gonna skip ahead again to why Fuentes hates weed. And the reason why I want to skip to this one is because, like I said at the beginning before we started like skipping around about different things, is the fact that we basically agree on almost everything. Like, I never really watched this stuff before than the occasional clip that pops up my feed, and usually it's something funny, not that political, about different stuff. And so listening to him say all this stuff, granted, like I said before, he might be schmoozing his way, he might be toning things down because he is rising in popularity and ascending. That kind of makes sense, after all. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, the whole possible flip-flop / whatever that was going on there. But I basically agree with him. Almost everything. And so when I was hearing him talk about weed, I was literally like, I was doing other things. And Tucker was asking him why he dislikes weed. And I was just sitting there like in my mind listing off the reason why I don't like weed. And then like 30 seconds later, Nick Fuentes would say the exact same thing. And I'm just like, holy fuck, okay. We are literally on the same wavelength. I know this sounds kind of retarded, that the thing that really got me going was Nick Fuentes hating weed, not like the Jews or immigration or anything like that. It's because weed is such a controversial issue, even today, and it's highly unfortunate. I hate weed. I hate anything that changes your sobriety, essentially, like, and alters your state of mind. I don't like alcohol. I don't like drugs. Those are basically it. I mean, I don't like gambling either. That's also technically altering too because the dopamine hits. But I don't like alcohol and I don't like drugs. Simple as. The alcohol was because my awful mother for that thing. Thank God that bitch is dead. But with weed, I disliked it too. It changes your mental state. It makes you extremely fucking lazy. Every time you attack weed, the weed defenders rise up and act absolutely insane. And they don't want to admit that weed is a drug and it does alter your state of mind. And if you do it for many years on time, you don't think that doesn't have some sort of effect on you? And then sometimes you see the shit from conservatives where like, oh, birth control is bad, because it harms women and their hormonal cycles and, blah, 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 blah. But then they don't make the same connection for weed when that's been done for years too. Like, it might be not as dangerous as crack cocaine or meth, but it's still a drug. It still fucks up your state of mind. It still makes you almost a worthless piece of shit in society. Yeah. Some tech bro with his crypto scam and, with all this other fucking weird stuff, he's able to do high and mighty. But just look at society since weed's been mass legalized with it. Look how the piss and needles within Colorado and Michigan and all these other states. I know there's other issues with them too, but it just makes a worse society being addicted to these substances, and being legalized makes them more socially acceptable because, well, it's legal, bro. Versus, even though people would still do it illegally, it still was a deterrent for a lot of people where they might try it once or twice, but because of the hassle it is to be able to get it, plus the trustworthiness of it, blah, 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 it was still relatively shameful and basically condemned to a certain extent until it was rising in ranks of society. And in my opinion, I know maybe it's not actually a Jewish psyop, it's not always the Jews, but it really just seems some global homo bullshit how weed has been so pushed across the board for the past 15 years now. And I guess maybe a little bit more than that, to become more socially acceptable, to become legalized. And how has society become better since it's become legalized? It's only looking worse, in my opinion. Yeah, immigration, feminism, blah, blah, blah are definitely factors as well, but there's nothing good about weed. There's nothing good about altering your mental state in general. Same with alcohol. Like, no, there are healthier ways to cope if you have a shitty life. Okay, maybe doing it once or twice for fun might not be the end of the world, but what's the point? You play video games, work out, eat healthy, touch grass. Like, there are better ways to ease your suffering and get a better life than drugging yourself and becoming a lazy bum and not doing anything all day and getting the munchies and shit like that. I just don't like it at all. And if you do it, fine, whatever. At this point, in my opinion, weed's a lost cause. If we went back 20 years ago and nipped it in the bud, it wouldn't be such an issue. But it's like alcohol now, where alcohol's legal, and even if you were to ban it, people would rise up and have issues with it and blah 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 blah. So we just got, unfortunately, at this point, we just gotta accept it. And I dislike it because, once again, go back 20 years ago, if we would have nipped it in the bud, this wouldn't be such an issue. But now we have to allow it to happen in society, because, well, everyone and their mother's gonna raise pitchforks against you if you disagree. And it's like, oh, God, now we can actually address the actual issues now. Though we know for a fact that weed is not healthy for you, just like alcohol's not healthy for you, why are we making it socially acceptable? I think when he wants this like majority white with like 80%, I personally would like to be like 99% or 100%, but I don't know that. I don't think it's realistic. Well, how has weed improved society? Now, public children's parks smell like a burning armpit. Yeah, that's another factor too. We need to treat weed like we treat cigarettes for 40 years. Agreed. I'm sure there's some medical uses for it, just like there's medical uses for fentanyl and cocaine. Fine. But doing that every single day, like it literally lowers your IQ. It literally makes you dumber if you do it for years on end. It affects your mental faculties. It makes you dumber. Unfortunately, I've seen that in real time. Which I guess is another reason why I hate it so much. I mean, I hate alcohol because my mom, but alcohol is so socially acceptable. It's like beating a dead horse almost, because there's no point with it. Weed, I still have that little shrivel of old man yells at clouds. Ooh, weed bad in me. But enough about my reasons for weed, which are basically the same reasons why Fuentes doesn't like weed either.
It's interesting, your audience, as I imagine it, I've never seen any of your numbers. I don't even know how big your audience is. It seems big to me, but I think of them as young men. Because that's the bulk of your audience, right?
Yes.
And yet here you are criticizing weed and video games and the internet, and you work on the internet. You are a creation. I mean, you wouldn't exist without the internet, of course. You didn't get a job at NBC News. So what kind of reaction do you get when you criticize weed, gaming, and the internet to young men?
A lot of them agree with it because they get it. It's their life. A lot of them, that's their life. Their life is, and another thing we didn't even bring up is the porn thing, which is there also. This is their life. Weed, gaming, porn. And I think they know it's bad. I think they know there's like some sense of guilt. And so it's interesting. I would say it's maybe an 80-20 split, where 20% say, oh, you're against weed? Not cool, man. It's just a plant. Well, they're very defensive about these addictions. And I think 80% say, I know I have a problem. Like, I have a guilty conscience. I know it's bad. I know it's terrible.
Why are you against weed?
Because I think that it's compromises the integrity of your mental faculties. I think there's something deeply wrong with that when you...
It does.
I'm against alcohol, too. I think it's wrong to numb pain. I think pain is a part of life. I think sobriety is should be experienced. And I think that weed is even worse because I think that, one, it's very dangerous. There's a lot of numbers now out of California and Washington that people are going to the hospital for psychosis. People are going crazy because of it.
It's also more subtle and therefore more insidious. Like you can't, I've done it. If you have a 12-pack for breakfast, everyone knows. But if you take a hit off the dab pen, nobody knows. So you can use it all the time.
Yeah, and
it smells.
It makes you a loser. It makes you lazy. People that are addicted to weed are not motivated, don't care about anything other than weed. There's sort of like an irony there where I used to hang out with a lot of stoners in high school. I never smoked weed, but all my friends did, and they were so chill and relaxed and didn't care about anything. But if you criticized weed, they would freak out and get extremely defensive.
Yes, I've noticed.
Right? If you insinuate that it's addictive, if you say it's a problem, they get very junkie behavior. And so I've always hated it. I think it's disgusting.
What is porn exactly? Describe how available is porn? What is it? I know what porn is, but you said...
I just wanted to play the weed part just because I was listening to this and I was like, oh my God, he's me for real. I literally had that. You can ask Stream and Winters because I was asking them for help for different things for tonight's stream. And I was like, oh my God, he's literally me to the T. A minor fan. I mean, I don't want to say fangirl because I don't consider myself a Fuentes fan. But I was just gonna oh shit. Like I said, we can't watch everything here. I guess it's not super long. But yeah, porn bad, by the way. Fun fact: addictions in general are bad. Okay, just watch the interview. I feel bad dismissing it like that.
And do you think it's related to the huge decline in actual sex and relationships and marriage, screwed up dating?
Amal doesn't want to hear people criticize her gooning habits, so she's skipping this part. Fuck you, Grosky. Fuck you.
All of this derives in part from porn, do you think?
I think it's a huge part of it. It's a huge factor. And it's even on the other side, too. It's become so destigmatized for women to actually participate in porn. People don't even recognize that OnlyFans is a whole separate category. It's an innovation in the realm of pornography because you have what everyone knows as porn, which is like videos of porn stars, like dedicated career sex workers having sex in a relatively controlled environment or something like that. But then you get OnlyFans, which is like Patreon for nudes or sex. And basically, there's now a very large subculture, much larger than people want to admit, of women who the moment they turn 18, that is what they do, is they make an OnlyFans account and they become an amateur porn star. And it is completely casual, because you could say that maybe 10 years ago, even at the heyday of internet porn, to be in porn, you got to be a porn star. Like that's your life and that's your career and that's who you are. And it's very shameful. With OnlyFans, it's like having a TikTok. It's like, here's my link tree, here's my Instagram account, here's my Facebook account, here's my YouTube, and here's my OnlyFans.
Why would any of this be legal?
I think that, there's, like you indicated, maybe there's an intelligence benefit to that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a political benefit to that. I think that...
Well, why wouldn't you arrest the people who run something like that?
It should be. If you had a Christian government.
Or how much the government cares about its people? I mean, is Iran a bigger threat or is OnlyFans? Iran's not turning my daughters to prostitution that I'm aware of.
Right.
Right? I mean, that seems like one of the worst things that could happen to any society.
Oh, absolutely.
So how big is the support for that? Like if a candidate were to come out and say, we ought to arrest the guys who own MindGeek, which is I think it's the biggest porn supplier in the world, or the guys who run OnlyFans, what would the reaction be among, people under 50?
I think there would be broad support for that.
Really?
I do, actually, yes.
I hope someone will say that. And I hope someone arrests them, like right away.
Yeah. That was actually
seizes their assets and puts them in prison.
Well, seizes their bodies and puts them in jail. Yeah, I mean.
The owners of that, people who are, talk about human.
This is going to sound contradictory with my whole rant on weed, but I'm not actually for banning porn. However, I am totally... The thing is about weed is I'm well aware the genie's out of the bottle. But with porn, I see it like with alcohol. And now weed in the modern age is when you make it so commodified and so socially acceptable, it's going to be almost impossible to actually ban it properly. What happened with alcohol back in the day, it's what's going to happen to weed if people try to get rid of it again. And it's what's happening with porn if people try to go after it. I'm just more upset by the weed issue because I felt like there's a chance to stop it when it happened, 20 plus years ago, but it's too late now. Porn is like alcohol, it's too late on a lot of things. However, I am totally okay with the government going after OnlyFans, after Pornhub, after different things like that, because a lot of them are run by or influence, and it is essentially prostitution, and prostitution is technically illegal. And so it basically wouldn't be, it's not really banning porn, it would be attacking the sources of it. So there still would be essentially porn kind of out there. You can go back to the smutty magazines. Women can read their monster porn in their smut books. As I still got Milking Farm beside me. Well, it's on the floor now. My cat knocked it over. Like, porn would essentially still kind of exist, but definitely more shutting down the, OnlyFans. Now, that would be nice, but it's just but at the same time, I also recognize, once again, just like getting rid of rebanning weed again or banning alcohol, it's unrealistic. It's not to mention, I don't know if I really want government to have that much control either, just to shut down companies and websites like that. But at the same time, there's a time and place for the government to act and use its power. That would be good and beneficial for society. Then again, I feel like a lot of the issues we have, specifically with porn, isn't really porn's fault. It's not good, mind you, but it's the fact that society has degraded so much that the dating scene is just non-existent. A girl can easily get a guy, but a guy can't get a girl to save his life, and it's creating a huge power imbalance. And a large part of it is thanks to feminism. Feminism has allowed women to be girl bosses, get the Jew daycare, or steal a man's actual job, decrease wages, increase housing costs. They're not having kids. They're allowed to do whatever they want, and yes, they're allowed to get an OnlyFans or a Fansly for this, or a Patreon for these things. And so if you nip it in the bud there specifically and bring in more traditional values and shame, and actually allow men to have a date and get a girlfriend and a wife, the need for porn wouldn't be as extreme, and it wouldn't be as commodified. OnlyFans has basically become non-existent in its own way for it, because then women would be actually against doing it, other than turning 18 and just going ahead and going for it from the get-go. And so basically the only ones using porn are for the poor souls that are in a dead bedroom and teenagers. Which, not saying teenagers should get access to porn, I want to make that completely clear. But there was a joke about how, finding your dad's magazines, or finding some raunchy magazines in the woods for a reason, even before the internet came around. And prostitution's the oldest profession in human history, there's always going to be that underlyingness to it, just like with alcohol. If we can actually bring back traditional society and shame and get women and destroy feminism, I feel like that would help take care of a lot of the porn issues. And then any lingering things could be with the whole government force that helps shut it down. So it would basically just be the magazines and the smut books left over. But I don't think either scenario is realistic, unfortunately. Humans will be horny with or without porn, yes. Like, the thing about, and the difference between porn and weed is horny is your biological function. There's no fighting it at all because your body is telling you have to reproduce. It's your natural biological function to help propagate and continue on your lineage because that's what animals do. It's that simple. Weed, not so much. That's an optional thing. Being horny, you can't really stop being horny. I mean, I'm sure there's different ways. Obviously, how you go about how you handle your horniness will affect you greatly. But there is a difference between something that's biological and getting a release for it and versus something completely optional like weed. Though once again, still porn bad, by the way. Want to make that clear. But there still is at least a bit of a difference there. Women and Jews use important sex against men has been a disaster to the Western civilization. Well, honestly, once again, I feel like guys wouldn't be using porn so much if they actually had girlfriends and wives. I think that's the main issue. Solve that and porn usage would go down significantly. Plus, I hear a good amount of marriages are pretty dry. Yeah, well, that's also because of feminism. Women don't respect men anymore because men have been neutralized and turned into shitty women, and women have been turned into shitty men. And so now we have this whole push for equality. Actually, with Fuentes does talk about here eventually, if I ever let him speak again. And it just completely ruins it. Women are supposed to be submissive. There's no such thing as marital rape. But at the same time, you kind of do need the vagina to be a little bit wet to get some action. And if she's not turned on by you, that's because a multitude of different factors, to be fair. It's not completely always the man's fault, but she just doesn't respect you anymore. She sees you as an equal. You're not fierce. You're not a danger anymore. There's nothing actually activating her ovaries. There's a reason why women want the bad boy, the minotaur porn, the milking farm, after all. You need to be fierce and dangerous and a threat because that gets her biological functions going. That she's going to create a fierce child herself. Thanks to your genes. And the modern life just doesn't allow that to happen thanks to one, woman being in the workforce, and two, well, men with office jobs and different things. If she's not turned on by you, you force her to be turned on by you. Yes, exactly. The other issue about banning porn too, and is the fact that, well, it'd be nice for the government to go after the different companies. Unfortunately, they're not going to do that. They're going to take the easy way out, and that's going to be requiring digital ID, which you're already seeing in Europe and the UK. You're kind of seeing that with the different states that have banned Pornhub, and I don't support digital ID. That's a pretty severe issue for me. It would take a lot. It's a really high stress important issue to me. So it would take actually a lot for me to accept the digital ID as a trade-off for whatever you're trying to prevent or do. Like, I basically, if you insist on digital ID, then I don't care what you're trying to prevent or do. I don't care. I just don't want the digital ID. I mean, I know the government already tracks us. I mean, for fuck's sakes, I'm a VTuber. I have an iPhone that does facial tracking right in front of my fucking face right here. And I'm sure there's already a Fed on my case for all the different shit that I say. I'm well aware that they track your every movement as it is, but digital ID is already a huge extra layer of insecurity to allow the government to control you. And I mean, look at what happened with Discord leaks. You know, the UK introduced digital ID. Discord and Twitter required, having to show your ID to use it. And like 3 weeks later, like what was it, a month? Like was it less than a month? Discord had that massive data breach with their third-party system that they used, and they swore they wouldn't actually save your IDs. Up and down, oh no, it's just a one-time use thing, then we immediately delete it. Suck it. Nope, too bad. Here's all your personal information. Get doxxed, motherfucker. And it's just like so frustrating. And unfortunately, that's what's going to be required to help basically make porn ban, and it's just not possible. It's just not physically possible. It's just not physically possible. Yeah, but the more steps they have to take to find people's identity, the better. I agree, which is why pretty much no matter what the issue is, I'm not going to side for the digital ID. Hell, even for immigration, I'm not going to side for digital ID. There's no reason to have a digital ID like Keir Starmer claims to be to help tackle illegal immigration. No, that's bullshit. You know who was illegal. It's pretty obvious. England was like 98% white just back in like the 70s or some shit like that. It doesn't take a genius to figure out who's here illegally and who's not. You just deport all the Browns or immigration now. Like, it's not that difficult. You don't need digital ID to help with immigration and mass deportations, but they're going to try and insist to do that anyways. Anyway, we should let them continue because I've been yapping for a minute. Honestly, this whole last section is really good, not just about toxic feminism. You can't really see it with my head in the way here, but this whole toxic feminism thing is actually really interesting. As well as the last part is what's next for America's future.
Trafficking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I thought we were against human trafficking.
Yeah. Well,
So you think that young people, because you always think of young people as so liberal, but like, no, they wouldn't think that was crazy?
no, I think especially among young men, they know it's a problem. It's ruining their lives, and they know it.
So what are the other factors that prevent, I'm sorry I called you gay, by the way, but I think I'm just too old or something. I'm like, why is anyone married? You tell me, why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the,
I just love how casually he's just like, I'm sorry I called you gay, by the way. I know there's a point in the interview when we skipped it where he's like, I thought you were fed. No, I thought you were fed. Oh my god, we just showed our badges and stuff like that. My god, this whole interview is fantastic, I think. It's very insightful and informative. I find it interesting. As somebody who, like I said, has basically ignored Fuentes all this time. I'll let him continue. This is where I thought it gets really interesting.
women. The women
I
are
should say that, but yeah.
extremely liberal. No one talks about that. They're increasingly, they do, especially after the last election. There's a 45-point difference between men and women. The men are extremely conservative. Increasingly, the women are extremely liberal.
What are they liberal on? What issues? Like, what does that mean, liberal?
Oh, they're very feminist.
Like, actually?
Extremely feminist.
I
Yes,
don't believe that, do they?
I think they do.
Really?
Absolutely.
How
Yes.
do you believe that?
I
Like,
think-
gender roles are a construct, that none of this is inborn? Like, you'd have to be an idiot to think that.
They like the idea of it. They like because of course I think all women naturally want strong men.
Of course,
Mhm.
obviously.
They naturally want a Chad. You know,
Yeah.
they want like a tall, buff guy.
The Minotaur.
But I think they like the idea of none of them want to work either. None of them
That's what
actually
I'm
want
saying.
to
No,
work.
that's what
but-
I'm saying. Of course, that's
Right.
It's obviously true. It's always been true. I work outside the home.
Right.
They don't have enough work at home. You know,
Yes.
There's a lot to do.
Chat, I will be the first one to admit I don't want to work. I'm a lazy piece of shit. I do not want to work. I'd rather just raise my kids and cook and bake cookies. Like, and I like teaching. I like yapping, obviously. Like, I actually want to become a professor in history. Fun fact about me. I like teaching others. I want to homeschool my kids. I just want to raise my kids and bake cookies. I know it's not that simple. But I don't want to have a real job, okay? I'm lazy. I don't want to, I guess I'm going to have to wake up at 5 a.m. for kids anyways. But, like, there's a difference between working for some Jew overlord and actually raising your kids that are your own kids and not handing them off to some random lady while your husband has a work wife and you have a work husband. Like, please, just give us back to traditional society. I hate this bullshit feminism. Ugh!
But no, I completely agree. So that's why I question, like, their feminism in what sense?
Yes. And, they like these vague appeals to equality. We want a chance to work and we want respect. And, ultimately, I think the whole political system is just based around women never being accountable for any of their choices. Ultimately, that seems to be that's what abortion is.
Yeah, of course.
As 99% of abortions are elective. So they say it's an unplanned pregnancy. You had sex out of wedlock with someone you didn't intend to have kids with. So now we have to kill the kids in the womb. And, these no-fault divorce laws. These women get married to guys maybe they never intend to stay with. And then when they're out, they're done. And they want child support and they want half the stuff. And I think a lot of men are looking at women and they're very liberal. They're overweight. They have a very high estimation of themselves. I think that people call it hoflation.
Hoflation?
Yes, their sense of their own looks and sexual value is very inflated. And so a lot of people are looking at these like frumpy, obnoxious, loudmouth, liberal women who are also very promiscuous and saying this is not actually appealing at all. And I don't want to start a family with a person
Sounds
like
awful.
this. Yeah, it is.
But if you believe in the patriarchy, as I fervently do, because it's just reality,
Base.
we didn't choose the system. We were born into a system that is part of nature, can't get out of it. So if you believe that that's true, which it is, then you think that men should lead. And if it's going to be better, men should make it better because that's their job.
Right.
So you don't want to give them a pass, do you? It'd be like it's all the girls suck. So
I don't even blame it on the women because I think that it's the incentive structures. Women are allowed to do this by the legal system, by kind of social norms. Technology is a big part of it. The attention that is available to women. Women go on Instagram and they get attention from thousands of men. So it's the incentives. But I would say that, because I hear this all the time, people say, well, the men need to step up and be better and lead the women. Easier said than done.
of course I agree with that.
They're at war with the system, and not even just the system, but also society. Because let's say you find one of these so-called good girls who's Christian and traditional, but through osmosis, wherever you go, she's going to be in society. She's going to be on TikTok. She's going to be on Instagram. She's going to be talking to other women. And maybe she's one way when you meet and get married, but 10 years down the road, 15 years, 20 years down the road, people change. And I think that women, as kind of the ultimate conformists, the ultimate enforcers of like social norms, I think eventually the pressure from society kind of gets to them. And a lot of them will go into
Depends what kind of husbands they have.
This is why I say I will double down and triple down, stand my ground. I don't fucking care. This is why you have to grab them when they're 18 fresh out of high school. I will hold my line there. Because they're already going to be inundated with feminist nonsense that they're all 18 years of life. But if you grab them fresh out of high school, before you get to college, you don't have to worry about them going into hundreds of thousands of dollars in college debt for their lesbian dance theory gender studies degree. So you save yourself the financial costs there. And she's not going to be brainwashed completely. There's been so many TikToks and videos of like before and after transitions or before and after feminism and different things like that. Where, pretty, mid girls who are, decent looking. Mid's actually not an insult. I mean, it's an insult for women, but technically it's not supposed to be. And, who just turn into absolute fat monstrosities here. So if you grab them when they're right out of high school, long as they're 18, make sure you check their IDs, boys. Then you save them from the brainwashing that it has and the college debt. And then you have to insulate them. Get them away from the internet. Make sure they don't have any credit cards because women, he is completely correct. Women are social creatures. They are conformists. There's a reason why the joke is that a woman will adopt whatever political beliefs that her man has. Like that's a reason. That's a joke for a reason here because that's just how women are. And you hear so many times, so many stories of all these women destroying their quote-unquote friends or relationship because they're jealous that they're actually successful and have a man while they're in their 30s and still lonely and they fucked like every man under the sun themselves and they actually can't get a guy anymore because guys don't actually like older women. Hag Maxon's a Jewish psyop, by the way, and it's just retarded. So you gotta get them when they're 18. But I'm going to put an asterisk in. Obviously, your age does matter too. Well, I'm personally of the belief that as long as you're, you're 18, you're legal, it doesn't really actually matter that much. There is going to be some social shame, some not the best. Don't do it if you're like 50 years old and they're 18. That's a bit much there, not going to lie. But if you're like 25 and she's 18, go fucking right ahead. You got them at the sweet point. There's hope for them. They probably only have a few bodies because they probably did horror in high school because there's no such thing as a virgin girl anymore. Any girl who says she's a virgin, I would be very careful of. So she probably at least has 1 or 2 bodies under her thing, which isn't great, don't get me wrong, but it's better than the 20 that the 22-year-old would have if she went to college. As long as you're still in your 20s, get them while they're 18, you're solving yourself a lifelong bunch of issues because Fuentes is correct with how these things work. You just gotta insulate them too and prevent them from being around other women, unless those other women are also pretty conservative. And even then, you have to be kind of careful how much time they spend around them because women are self-destructive and they love destroying each other. So it happens all the fucking time. They're catty awful bitches. Why do you think the witch trials existed? It's insane. So, women are evil. Be aware of that. Well, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying you're retarded. Well, okay, I might be retarded. I'm well aware of that factor, but I'm not wrong.
I mean, if there's real leadership at home, I don't know a single happily married woman who's liberal. Not one. I know a lot of married women. I mean, I'm 56. All the women I know are married. Mm-hmm. And every happily married woman is non-liberal. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine. There's no category for happily married, middle-aged liberal woman. There's never been one.
Right.
So, maybe the job is to, make a girl happy and, all this nonsense ends.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that could be a bottomless pit, too, because the one critique I have of the men is, and you're right about this, they enable this behavior.
Well, that's for sure.
This epidemic of simps who... And especially with Christians, I've noticed this. This is why Andrew Tate has so much appeal, and the Christians are kind of losing this conversation. Andrew Tate's a Muslim polygamist who is very chauvinistic, and you could even argue it as someone who has ran an OnlyFans site himself, is not an observer, let's say, of Christian sexual morality.
No.
But men are going with him because he's putting women in their place. He's talking about patriarchy and women's place in a society like that, whereas Christian men, Catholics, Protestants alike, are both kind of tone policing the men, and they worship their wives, they worship the women, put them on a pedestal, and they kind of get bossed around, they get henpecked by the women.
I think we're required to love our wives. That's all over the New Testament. Husbands, love your wives, wives, respect your husbands. That seems like a very natural balance to me.
See, I like Tucker a lot, actually. but I think he says in an interview he's like 53 in here. But he's definitely a product of the older generation, that's for sure. Because and a little bit too much in the more neutered Christian faith, in my opinion, as well. Because you can still love your wife. But what Fuentes is talking about is not hating your wife. In fact, that in my opinion, what Fuentes is talking about is actually loving your wife. Because women want strong leaders. They want a man that will defend them and protect them and provide for them. And if you're playing on an equal level, or if you're going even further than that and bending to her will, she's not going to respect you anymore. You look weak. Shit tests, as shitty as they are shit tests for a reason. Women do this naturally because they're testing you to see if you will bend to her will. And if you bend to her will, then she doesn't like you anymore. She doesn't respect you because you're not supposed to actually bend to her. You're supposed to tell her this is what it is, deal with it, because that's the natural order of things. And that is true love right there, because you're putting your woman in her place and she respects you more, and you're going to have a much happier relationship because of that. But Tucker, I mean, I'm not saying Tucker doesn't have a happy relationship, because, maybe he does have a more egalitarian one. I don't know completely about this stuff. He does seem decently traditional. So maybe he's coming from the wrong perspective here. I don't know. I don't know his inner workings of his relationships. But it's not the right mentality to have at all, especially with modern women, with how bad they are. They desperately want to be put in place. The reason why this monster porn thing keeps on becoming viral on Twitter and men are disgusted because they're realizing how basically the pocket of feminism allows them to actually appreciate masculinity. It's safe horny for women to express that they want a monster. They want a man that's bigger, tougher than them and will take care of them, but they can't actually admit it to themselves because they're strong girl boss feminists. And so the monster is their transplant for that, because they want a man to act like a monster. In fact, I just found out this. I've seen it before on Twitter, but I never really understood it. This green line theory, and I haven't really dug deep into it. But like part of it is about how like when you're in a photo with a man and a woman, if the man is leaning into the woman, that means he's submissive to her and she's not going to have respect for him. Versus the woman leans into the man, that's the proper natural order of things. And if they're equal, if the lines are equal, then they see each other as equals. I don't know about how much the last part personally myself, but there does seem to be actually some truth to it. Because you shouldn't be leaning into your girl. You shouldn't be relying on her for support physically either. Women, once again, want to be protected and provided for. They look to you for comfort and security, and leaning into her shows the fact that you are not that because she needs to protect you instead. And, once or twice is fine, especially if, like, somebody dies. That's what's kind of like crying, essentially, right? Where there are specific times where it is okay for a man to show weakness. But one, you need to do it with a woman you trust, and two, you need to make it extremely rare and only for dire situations, like usually somebody dying, because that's the only time that the woman will, and even then, that unfortunately is still kind of a risk. I say kind of just because of how modern women are. It's very unfortunate and it shouldn't be like that. But women don't respect weakness, and crying and leaning into her is weakness. And the more you do it, the more it destroys the relationship. Well, it could be your experience. I got bored with women I can't talk to. No simping though. You guys were talking about different women with conversations and stuff like that. Listen, women aren't smart. They're only made for babies and baking cookies. You still need to have some sort of baseline conversation with her, but philosophy isn't exactly their specialty now, is it? I'll never show weakness in front of a void. Smart. Mating pressing a woman is okay because you're leaning into her. No, that's different. That is plowing her.
Yeah, and I think that you have to love your wife as your wife.
Yeah.
A lot of men.
As opposed to what? Your mom?
Well, no, like,
No,
like your buddy.
No.
Because I hear this all the time, and I hate this. Guys will say, I married my best friend. And I think, she's your wife. She's not your best friend. Because there's a difference.
What is the difference?
I think that when you talk about your best friend, you're a peer. You're an equal. And I think your best friendships are with other men. And I think that your wife ultimately is subordinate to you. She's your helpmate. Yeah. And ultimately, as the man in the marriage and as the father, you have authority, the final say over the household.
Well,
and she can give advice. It's not to say I'm not a freak where you say, shut up, woman. I mean, of course, you discuss things with your wife and your wife gives input, but the authority rests with the man.
Of course. But God set up this kind of amazing system where men are physically stronger. Mm-hmm. So, like, of course, you could make your wife do whatever you wanted. You're bigger than she is.
Right.
But he also instilled in men this desire to please your wife. Like, that's a very natural thing. You want your wife to be happy.
Absolutely.
happy wife, happy life thing is completely real. It's like you can't get away from it. It's not like all of these things. It's not a choice. It's the biological reality that you live with, that you were born with. Like, you want your wife to be happy. And if she's unhappy, you're unhappy to a much greater extent than vice versa, right?
Yeah.
I think men care about their wives being happy much more than wives care.
If she's unhappy, it's probably because either one, didn't separate her from her girlfriends and are trying to sabotage her relationship. Two, she's in online too much, so once again, you need to separate her. Or three, and I hate saying this because this is very feminist coded, but she is, because this puts a lot of blame on men, and I don't really like doing that because women are bitches and you can almost never make a woman happy. But the best way to shut up an unhappy woman is just to fuck her. That's the man's responsibility. If she's unhappy, it's more than likely the man's fault in that case for that third option. You had to fuck her properly. You gotta strip her away from the internet and her friends. And also, one, obviously figure out what she's unhappy about. Is probably something petty and stupid, and just listen to her rant about it. And then she's an emotional creature. Once she's done with it, she'll be pretty much over it. So you gotta fuck her, let her talk, fuck her, and then call it a day. Like, it's actually not that hard to deal with an unhappy woman. You just unfortunately have to deal with it and understand that women are essentially children. They're emotional creatures. This is why you're the leader of the household. So shut up, woman. The Floyd loves to be thrown around. Completely correct here. See, you say that, but you don't have to deal with the headache problem. See, you listen to her, you fuck her, and then she's happy again, and then she goes and minds her own business and waters her plants and bakes you cookies, and then you can go play video games, so you don't have to worry about it here. Some main criticisms are true, Amal. Oh yeah, I try not to shy away from criticizing men too much, because obviously, like, men do have issues too, and I'm not gonna be like, oh, woman bad all the time. I mean, I am, but like, men do have issues. That's 100% true. But I do feel a lot more sympathy for men because it really feels like society is working them against them and turning women against them as well. And basically been playing a lose-lose scenario for what it is. And that's not really men's fault. It's men's fault for laying down and rolling over, but it's also not their fault that they're turning the freaking frogs gay and purposely making men more feminized. And you're kind of fucked from when you're born in that aspect of things. I feel a lot more sympathy for men than I do for women.
Their husbands being happy,
Yes,
I've noticed. And that's compensation for their lack of physical power. That's my view of it. And that's why it is this kind of perfect balance. But somebody needs to be the final decision maker. I completely agree. And when you give up that, when you abrogate that, there's no respect, there's unhappiness, and there's infidelity.
Right. Well, that's the ingredient that's missing. The way I would put it very succinctly is men right now are the responsible party, but have no authority. And that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
You know, if the buck stops with you and you're to blame and you're the responsible one, then you also need to be able to have the final say and call the shots. And one without the other doesn't work. And I think that's really smart and absolutely right. I do think, I've just noticed this, that men who stay unmarried for too long become like kind of fragile. There's something about the give and take, something about living with, in fact, I think it's the key to life, someone you don't fully understand, that broadens you, that keeps you always thinking, that makes you wiser, more patient, more thoughtful, more self-aware, and more flexible. And those are all good qualities.
But why would you call them flexible, Tucker? Like, I don't really like the fact that he said flexible, sorry. I mean, why do you call him fragile? I mean, he's kind of correct in a certain way, because I have seen men worn down by being married for too long to some god-awful woman. But that's because they didn't actually put them in their place, because they've been, one, feminized, and two, taught that equality is a good thing when it's not. You should not be treating your woman as an equal. And so she's going to just degrade you down until you're nothing but a doorstep for her. So it's unfortunate, very unfortunate. What Tucker's describing is not really fragile, in my opinion, but he's like, fragile's a bad thing. That's not a good thing, but what he described isn't what I call fragile. It's just being older and wiser and more flexible, and not being as rambunctious as you are in your early 20s, because those are fighting age men. They're supposed to be going off to war, versus 50s, you're supposed to settle down. Like, you're supposed to be long past settled down and be having grandkids at that age. There's kind of a difference there. I'm not exactly sure where he's going with this with his points.
And the absence of that, like in homosexuality or like men who are single too long, they get very rigid. Have you ever noticed this? Like, I like things the way I like them, and they just get like, no.
Oh, yeah. I certainly get what you mean by that.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Yeah. I would say that when you say you don't fully...
I don't really think it's a bad thing. I mean, obviously it depends on how bad it gets. With, like, I just like it how I like it. There's definitely going to be some issues there if it's too much, but it's the man, he's in charge of the household, the woman should submit to him, do what he wants. He should still listen to her for advice from time to time. How I see relationships is supposed to be the man in the front fighting the monsters, with the woman in the back casting like the healing spells, essentially. I know there's some nerdy RPG example, But it's like your woman is supposed to support the man, and the man does need the woman to help survive, but he's still the one sacrificing himself to protect her. That's essentially how it's supposed to work. Being rigid is actually not a bad thing, as long as it's not too extreme. When it's women, no, that's a different story, and that's definitely one of my big faults myself, is that because I was essentially raised as an only child, and also have a lot of tomboy aspects of me, thanks to being raised as by my single father, I definitely get very OCD about how things are supposed to be, and that is an actual problem I have. But I'm a woman, I'm not supposed to be like that.
Understand women. To me, I feel like women are very simple in terms
Have you
of.
ever lived with one?
No, I haven't lived with them, but I mean, and don't get me wrong, maybe it's difficult, but I feel like they're pretty simple.
We're all pretty simple. I mean, no one's more simple than I am, but we're all pretty simple. But what I mean is, like, on a day-to-day, on the level of experience, like, you don't always understand what they're saying because it's never about what they say it's about.
Right.
And men are just tend to be kind of dog-like in their straightforwardness. I'm hungry, I'm horny, whatever it is.
I disagree. I feel like men are complicated. I feel like women are like, I'm hungry, I'm horny. I feel like men are very complicated.
Really, how?
I disagree with Fuentes here. Women are way more complicated. They obfuscate their language, are super emotional, and really fucking retarded, and I hate them so fucking much. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit at this point, because they got through the major section about this whole toxic feminism thing I want to do, and we will listen to the last few minutes of this, which is what does America's future hold? I believe the words cut off, but there we go, and that'll be it.
In my experience, so
Maybe we'll see.
is all of this going in this country? Like,
Well,
where are we in 5 years?
Not anywhere good. I'm really concerned, and I'm not one of these doomsday sayers. There's a lot of people that forever, but the sky's falling every day. But I really feel like the things that concern me the most. It's the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Seemed like we crossed a Rubicon there.
I agree with that.
Because he's just a conservative guy, relatively moderate, expressing his opinions. He's not the president. He's not a politician. And it wasn't just that he got shot. It was what happened afterward, which is that 100,000 liberals went on TikTok and celebrated. And that shows that how can you integrate or harmonize with people that hate you that much? They see some, and I understand that liberals thought he was a jerk. Like maybe he was a little rude or something like that. And he really wasn't. I mean, he was pretty patient as they come.
I just tried to fill in for him last week and immediately snapped at some kid and threatened to beat him up and went crazy. And I had said a prayer for patience, by the way, and I still couldn't handle it. So, Charlie Kirk was a remarkably even-keeled, patient, decent man.
Yes, and yeah, so whatever their perception of him was, to see him get his face blown up in front of everybody like that, and the first reaction of someone in the crowd who was present, some guy with a beard jumps up and celebrates. Did you see this?
No.
Some liberal kid in the audience jumps up and says, "All right."
I literally can't handle it. I'm so upset by it. I haven't looked at anything.
It's disgusting. And I saw that and said, yeah, like there's no putting the genie back in the lamp here. That was one. The other thing I'm really worried about is what's happening at these ICE detention centers, where it's happening not far from where I live in Broadview, Illinois, where they set up an ICE detention facility, and the administration is rounding these people up, which I support, but they're doing it in a very provocative way. They're broadcasting it. They're making hype edits on Twitter of like these raids on apartment complexes, which I think are very cool, but it's somewhat provocative. And Antifa showing up. In order to protect ICE, the administration's putting DHS. Well, now they're protesting the DHS presence, and the administration of the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago are telling Chicago police, don't help ICE. And they're encouraging the protesters. And what I see there is like a level of tension that just keeps increasing.
Yes.
And there's leadership. There's civilian leadership on both sides, like the governor and mayor who are Democrats won't back down versus a Republican president. There's a security division too, the police versus ICE, the police versus DHS. There's a constitutional question about the federal supremacy, you know, and I see all the ingredients of like a low boil civil conflict, full-blown civil war. And I'm not that guy, but I see all the ingredients there for that to happen. So I'm deeply concerned about where that will go.
How would you handle it if you were in charge? If you're the president, what do you do about that?
I think maybe this is controversial.
I don't know if a civil war is going to be happening anytime soon, frankly. I definitely think it's on the horizon, but I still don't see the white men, and it's going to have to be the white men, standing up and actually making a difference. I know a lot of people got up in arms over Charlie, which I did too, and I wasn't even a fan of him. It really affected me at the time, and it still does. It's so fucking upsetting. They shot the guy who wanted to talk, and yet they had the audacity to call him a Nazi and a fascist. And they shot the guy, the moderate. Ugh, I'm not gonna rehash those points. It's been said and said over and over and over again. They just use Nazi and fascist as a paint a target on your back, so somebody who's more violent will attack you in their stead. I know a lot of people got up in arms, so I don't see the people actually rising. I think the UK is probably the closest. We saw some things with Ireland like last week. And England itself is getting pretty bad. I saw this video yesterday of this Afghani guy just randomly stabbing people on the streets, and one of them was a dude just walking his dog. And thanks to the digital ID laws and the UK censorship shit, nobody in the UK could actually technically see it. And no, none of the news stories are covering, obviously, but you know, a Muslim kills some Jews and it's the worst thing in the world. And meanwhile, British girls are getting raped every fucking day and people are getting stabbed walking their dogs. But it's fine. I'm kind of getting on a tangent here. And I still don't see the people rising up anytime soon. I hope they do. I'm fed posting on Maine. I hope they fucking do. You gotta vote your way out of this. You gotta vote your way out of this, chat. And I do think there are things brewing, but if somebody takes the first shot, well, technically the left has already taken multiple shots. They killed the Republicans that went to the baseball game in 2017. Well, actually, they didn't kill. They shot at them and tried to kill them. And they tried to assassinate Trump multiple times. Obviously, they assassinated Charlie Kirk. They're resisting ICE. There was that ICE facility shooting like a month or two ago. They keep on taking the first shots, but until they actually go after the regular people, I don't think anything's going to happen. But it will be the left that's going to be going after the regular people. But then again, with Black Lives Matter in 2020 and burning cities down, nothing happened then. So I do think a civil war will eventually happen. But right now, I'm betting on nothing ever happens. All the trans school shooters? Yes, exactly.
But they have to crush the other side. You have to, because you can do one of two things. You cannot challenge the left and let them do their thing, or you can utterly confront them and defeat them and remove hope from the equation. If you resist, you will be arrested. Like, this is an insurrection. There's 10 million people here illegally. We're getting them out. You're rioting. You're going to jail too. Like, it has to be crushed. But if you do anything less than that, if you do in the middle, all you're doing is antagonizing and feeding the other side. And if they think there's a chance they can win, they will get bolder and stronger and they'll start to rally. And that's when it's sort of like people think it's close or like it's contentious. That's when it breathes. That's when oxygen is fed to this kind of fire. So if I were Trump, I would say screw 200 National Guard, like arrest the mayor of Chicago, like arrest the governor, shut it down, like make it clear. Like Washington, bring in the troops and say the federal government is supreme. The immigration law is the law of the land. If you're not on board with that, you're going to jail. If you attack ICE or box them in with your car, you're going to jail for a long time. Anything less than that, you might as well just not even bark up that tree at all.
Yeah. 100% absolutely crush them. There's no way around it. You have to absolutely crush them because that's what the left will do to you. They've been open about it for years. They've tried for years. What do you think the fuck COVID was when Black Lives Matter? I keep on bringing it up and up and up and up over again because it's the most obvious example of them just being absolutely insane. And then obviously Charlie Kirk's assassination, all those fucking Twitter leftists. You even have politicians that secretly condone it. Jay Jones talking about murdering kids. They hate your guts. And if they had power, Nick Fuentes and Tucker would not be doing this. I probably wouldn't have a YouTube channel, though that's surprising that I still do technically. And there's a bunch of Twitter would not be the way it is, even with Elon at the helm. Like, it's insane how crazy they actually wield their power, but they wield it effectively. If you're not the one using it, your enemy is, and they will beat you down until you're a pulp. We need to do the same thing. There's literally no reason why Trump is playing soft on these people. I know he's afraid that the Democrats are going to be like, oh, you're arresting the opposition, but the opposition's being traitors. We have rules against traitors. We have systems in place to deal with people like this. Deal with them. There are rules on the book that he could easily use to crush him. And it's not even really being full authoritarian. These are just simply typical nation-style rules that we have because we are a nation. We are the world hegemon. There is literally no reason why he can't do this stuff other than fear and trying to play nice. We are not in a state where we need to play nice. We need to play hard. Because as soon as the left tries to take any form of power again, we are fucked. It's a matter of time. And anything less than that is insane.
Nick
I think
Fuentes,
it's over.
thank you very much.
Yep, it's over. I was like, I'm pretty sure that was the last point here. Please, 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 please. Yeah, I know Tucker Carlson's a million times bigger than I am. But this was fantastic. I think he did a great job. They had a great conversation. It was pretty revealing about Fuentes, especially like someone I said before, someone who's basically kind of ignored him about everything. And I thought it was really good. There's definitely, I know we went through and skipped through some stuff, but there's still a good chunk of the interview that we didn't watch. So I recommend listening to it in your free time. And not to mention, the comments are hilarious. Matt Walsh asked the Daily Wire permission to watch this. I'm in the UK and I got arrested watching this. I'm black and I changed my smoke alarm batteries to watch this. I stopped sacrificing my chicken to absolve me of my sins to watch this. God, I love the internet sometimes.